hold on, I need mine first real quick.
Oh, do you need
Yeah, I got to do the introduction. I know. All right. That's right. Note, remote up. Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Okay, I got it. Yeah. All right, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of Openwest 2015. Woo! Everybody have their geek hangover already started, you know, mid-conference time, feeling a little tired? Well, hopefully you guys are enjoying the show. I know I've been loving it. So a few quick reminders before we start on the keynote. First thing, how many people here have already built your badges? All right, nice fun stuff. Now, by also a show of hands, who here has upgraded to the full gamer kit? All right, a few of you. There are still some available. If you are interested in building out the full system, you can go to the registration desk and purchase them. There's also a couple people who pre-purchased and have not picked theirs up yet. They are available there. So please grab that while you can. And then you can find the time in the wonderful hackerspace, take some time and build your hardware. All right, so a couple of notes. Social networking. Remember, we do have the hashtag Openwest. Meet and find out what other people are saying, find out what classes are hot, what's really interesting. Please also notice on Twitter, OpenWestConf, they are doing several giveaways today. One of the first ones from following and retweeting, they have a nice Tux keyboard available, so if you're interested in that, go ahead and follow, and then they'll be announcing some of the other prizes later on. Also note, Joined In is a software service, social service. It allows you to rate some of the speakers. So please go in there, give your feedback, see what we can do to improve for next year. Some people really enjoy some of the junior presentations. Make sure you let them know. Some people are looking for more advanced ones. Let them know. It's a great way to help us form next year and let people know what you're looking for. All right, a couple of things. As always, we do have a couple speaker changes. First thing, if you have the Openwest app, we'll be updating, putting things available on there. We do have a couple cancellations. Those 3 classes were canceled due to speaker sick. So, sorry for that, but life happens. Also note, Capture the Flag is running hot. You can see, you can go on there, ctf801labs.org. Go ahead and register for free. Play what you want. There's a lot of opportunity. A lot of really fun games, test your knowledge, see if there's other areas that interest you. There's some really interesting challenges, like in the lockpicking area. You can try different things, learn some new skills while you're scoring points in the game. And we all love gamification of hacking. I mean, come on, that's just a great thing. So if you are interested, you can do it wherever you want. Just join on this site, play around, have some fun. But if you want, there is a dedicated room in the hackerspace where you can go and sit down, have some focused attention. Also, ask questions if you're just trying to learn a little bit. So great social area for people interested in that. And of course, with the gamification, here's our current top players right now. Pretty darn. Weed Patch, I'm expecting more from you. You got to work a little harder. So those are the high scores, of course. You can try and take them out. But, if you can just go ahead and just try and do what you want, come in low scores and learn what you like. Find out if there's some new areas in hacking that just are of interest to you. All right. A little bit of extra news going in. We do have the tech team up. If you are interested in small business, entrepreneurship, just want to get interested or get more acquainted with other people who are entrepreneurs in the area, this is a great place to go. Learn about groups like Beehive Startup, some of the other great resources we have in this valley. If you're looking to take your idea and make it into a real business, kind of move on from wherever you are, that's a great place to go and meet some other people who are hackers and interested in the entrepreneurship side of things. So, one at SB 134. Also, tonight, after the wonderful panel we're going to have on privacy, please attend. There will be, right out here in the atrium, the board game night. Lots of different people bringing in their favorite games and just having a lot of fun. So a little food, a little fun time. GPG key signing was originally going to be tomorrow. Due to requirements, it will be today, this time. So if you want to be able to expand your web of trust, be able to find out who you know in the area and can validate, there's a great opportunity. And for those people who need either a quiet room, need the women's lounge, these are our different locations. If you need some peace and quiet, whatever, those are available for you. And in those areas, of course, please be mindful of other people's needs. Respect the area. So let's move on to our wonderful first keynoter. Since we're running a little behind, I'll try and rush through this a little bit. We're very happy to have a great engineer and resource from our friends at Red Hat. Everybody here, of course, is very familiar with Red Hat, one of the biggest names in the Linux industry. They've done so much for us. Well, it's really great when we can bring in people from high ranks, great resources. But it's great to be able to come in and talk to us here in Utah. Fly in and and it's not just Jared Smith representing Red Hat here. It's actually a real name, someone who's important. So. Yeah, I got to rag on Jared, So a couple of the same geek questions. Her first computer was just an old 8080 from a no-name brand, and so that gave her a great white box experience, kind of like a lot of us. Her editor of choice, she was very quick and very proud to say, definitely Vim. Yes. Ooh, house divided. All right. And, I had to ask her distro of choice, Fedora. Yeah. So with that, we welcome Denise Dumas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Well, thank you so much for inviting me here. It's great this is my first trip to Utah, so I was really... interesting places. Oops. Okay, better? So there are a lot of places where open source is really leading transformative change in the industry. And I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the kinds of things that we're hearing from our partners and our customers, and just things that are bubbling up out of the many fabulous upstreams that we participate in. I didn't know a lot about what kind of crowd to expect here, but when I looked online, I realized it was going to be lots of engineers, lots of developers. So first I want to ask, how many of you guys are running Fedora? All right, good. Jared's been doing a good job. We got to get, a little more activity here. Okay, and how many of you are participating in an upstream project? Not a lot of people already working in upstreams? Oh, good. Well, then I have an opportunity to convince you to go get involved a little bit more. That's great. Yeah? Okay. So, first there was the distro. There are a number of people here who seem like they might be old enough to remember back in the day of distro wars. When I think back 10 years ago, this is where Red Hat really got its start. There were lots and lots of upstream projects trying to light up the commoditized hardware, right? These were the days when the x86 architecture really got cheaper, and suddenly everybody had the opportunity to get access to cheap hardware, and you needed something to run on it that wasn't going to be Windows. People wanted something that they could hack around with. And so lots of people started putting together for their own use collections of kernels and all the layered pieces that you need to go along with the kernel. People started working on, well, I've got it all put together. How am I going to install it? And that's when a lot of the problems really started to become apparent. What do you do when you have lots and lots of build time dependencies that conflict with each other? What do you do when everything you have needs a different version of the runtime library? So the distros started to come together. People started to put together official collections of pieces for their own use. And then after a while, they started to combine efforts. And so out of all of this, we got a few large distros and lots more on the fringes. Did that change? But what's nice about open source is that as the distros came together, they came to appreciate the value of all sorts of different skill sets. So part of my job for Red Hat is to work with a lot of the upstreams. And a lot of what we try to do, I hire a lot of people every year, right? I need talented people that participate in upstreams, that understand what the world of open source is like. And so I work really hard to try to encourage people to participate there. And one of the things that we always find as a bar to entry is that there's this false impression that you need to be some kind of rock star coder to be a member of an upstream. And I'm here to tell you that that is absolutely not true. So a lot of you are probably working in proprietary software right now, right? Yeah, proprietary products? So you know what kind of a team it takes. Oh yeah, nice face. So you know what kind of a team it takes to get a product out the door. You've got to have somebody to put the hardware together. You've got to have the team that gets the software to boot on the hardware. You've got to have somebody to write the installation. You've got to have the compilers and the languages. And you also need people to organize the efforts and write the documentation and do the translation and design the user interfaces. And so there's a whole range of skills that go into putting a product together. And exactly that same skill set, that range of skill sets, is what we value in open source communities. There's room for everybody. So it's not, we try to fight the rock star coder stereotype, because one of the things that we really value more and more in the upstreams is diversity. I'm thrilled as I look here to see so many women in the audience. Yay! Yay! Yeah! It makes it a better environment for everybody because we get different viewpoints, right? As you try to do consumer software, as official open source products come out and move out into the real world, you need a whole range of viewpoints represented. Engineers write software that meets their own needs. Part of the reason why open source has been successful so far is if you look at where it's been successful, it's in the deepest, darkest infrastructure, right? It's in the operating system and the automation and the places that engineers know really well because that's where we live every day. But if we want to grow the world of open source software, we're going to be moving up the stack. And that's where you come into contact with the business applications and more of the IT infrastructure and more of the places where a pure engineering viewpoint, you don't know. Right? So that's where we need all sorts of participation from everybody. So choosing what goes into a distro, right? If you look at the set of upstream projects represented on this slide, these are the kinds of things that we put together into a typical operating system. This, maybe 5 years ago, was really hot, right? Wow, I'm working in the C compiler. Man, I'm working in the kernel. That was always my ambition. I wanted to work in the kernel. But anymore, we are moving up the stack in the world of open source. Look at projects like OpenStack, right? Look at the world of containers, things like Atomic and CoreOS. We're moving to different places. From the millions and millions of open source products that exist, all those upstreams, we put them together into the distros, and there are a few that over the years have gotten to be the biggest distros. They've got the most consumers. So Novell, OpenSUSE, Fedora feeds into Red Hat, Enterprise Linux feeds into CentOS, Ubuntu, of course. So the distros, I mean, how many of you have worked on a distro? We've done packaging applications or packaging upstream stuff and debugging, working on the test days. There's a lot that goes into putting all this together. When I put these slides together for this presentation, I started with a few different decks that we've been using over the years. And even 2 years ago, this slide is a recycle of something that we were using 2 years ago, except that all of the numbers had to grow by an awful lot. So even just 2 years ago, I would have said maybe 80% of the Fortune 500 companies were running open source software. Now I can say that 90% of the Fortune 500s are running Red Hat software. And I know that number's true because I had the internal business guys validate it. And that, to me, it's pretty impressive that in 2 years it's grown by that much. It shows that the acceptance of open source is growing. And it's not just, the conversations are changing, right? It used to be you go into a Wall Street bank, and what they want to know is, well, is it stable? Well, is it good enough? Well, do you have the features? Is it going to perform? Because what they were looking for out of the world of open source was good enough, but cheaper. But now, it's totally different. You go in and what they ask is, what are you guys following in the upstreams? Hey, we're looking at automating over here. What do you think? We're looking at these 3 different projects and we think that each of them has a chance. We like these features out of this one. We like these features out of this one. How do we get this all merged together, right? It's a whole different conversation because the big industries have accepted that innovation is coming out of open source. And innovation is what they're looking for more and more to drive their businesses. It's not about commoditization anymore. They're seeing the value that software can bring. Thank you, Google. And then there came the cloud, right? Blah, blah, buzzword, blah, blah. Who's playing buzzword bingo? Yeah, if you're playing, get ready, because here we go. Public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. Yeah, we got all the buzzwords, right? It's been fascinating. And really, when you think about it, cloud started with virtualization, right? And virtualization, right? KVM. So an upstream project, of course, if you listen to IBM, they've been doing virtualization for years, and the upstream was just finally catching up with what they used to do on the S390s. But virtualization, people started moving their workloads into guest operating systems. And if you're going to deploy your workloads in guest operating systems, you need a way to easily provision those operating systems. And if you're going to do all that provisioning, well, you need a way to manage all those operating systems. And if you've developed all of that to support your own business needs, well, you know, maybe if you made that open source and made it a project, then somebody else would jump on and you could share it and you could get more people contributing to the code base, and it could meet everybody's needs because everybody that you talk to when you go to a conference has the same kind of problems in this space. And the next thing you know, everybody's talking about cloud, and your VP's out on the golf course talking to somebody else's VP, and everybody has to have a cloud strategy. So, right? Everybody got a cloud strategy? Yeah, we got a cloud strategy. But what's fascinating about cloud is that when you look at the pieces, anything that's getting buzz is totally open source. It's an entire open source platform. right? I mean, I could talk for half an hour just on this slide alone, but in every box here, there's innovation going on, and in every single box, the innovation is being driven out of an upstream open source project. So even look at the operating system, right? Well, operating systems. 2 years ago, well, I run the operating system team at Red Hat, and my guys were depressed, right? OpenStack was hot, the operating system was boring, nobody wants to work on the operating system, that's so like 90s. Not so anymore. Now the operating system is cool again, right? They're off working on Project Atomic, figuring out ways to shrink it and streamline it and make it into a real hot platform for deploying containers on top of, and they're having fun again. So I'm really glad of that. But, so, I mean, then, you know, CoreOS doing the same kind of thing, right? Even VMware's jumping in with a kind of open source project that they're trying to do for operating systems for containers. Look at the world of storage, software-defined storage. Man, the expensive proprietary storage vendors, talk about an industry that's about to get disrupted. Look at Ceph, right? Look at the ability that you've got now to use a bunch of JBODs to provide resilient, redundant storage available in a cloud that 5 years ago you could only get with megabucks. Same thing going on with networking. Software-defined networking. Over the next 3 years, the telco industry is going to get a real change, right? And they know it. They're all talking with the open source vendors. They're all talking with us, and they see what's going on. NFV, network function virtualization, they're moving from a world where you had your little canned appliance, right? You bought your expensive hardware and your proprietary software that only ran on that special purpose hardware. And they're moving out of that into software-defined networking. And the innovation there is being led by projects like Open vSwitch and Open Daylight and OpenNFV, Open. So networking, again, same deal. Massive innovation, massive disruption to industries. And it's all being driven out of the upstreams. And you know, some of this is people who had a bright idea, but a lot of it is individual companies, companies like Sixwind, companies like Red Hat, companies like Intel, getting together in the upstreams and figuring out how to work together in an upstream, even though we compete with each other in real life, right? So there's a lot of co-opetition that goes on, and learning how to deal with that and learning how to be a good community member and how to, you know, a lot of people throw a project out there, right? I've got a chunk of proprietary code. Well, I've decided I'm going to open source it. So I create myproject.org, and I put my code out there. I put my code out on GitHub, and hey, now I'm open source. How come nobody's coming to visit? Right? It's really hard to establish a community around some of this stuff. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. And if you're a company that is trying to do that kind of thing, you have to be willing to give up control. And companies don't like to give up control of their intellectual property, right? It's a little scary. You can't, but if you try to establish a community, by definition, it has to be a community where everybody gets to have input into the direction of the product. Imagine being a product manager at a company like Red Hat. You don't control the engineers. Everything that you work on comes from an open source project with an upstream. You might have a whole long list of features that you want and that some of your people are going to work on, but are those features going to make it into the product? Who knows? Not unless your engineers can convince the upstream that that's the way that the upstream wants to go, right? And there's a skill set. So Robert here, Robert, stand up, Robert. Stand up and wave. Robert is doing a talk later today about how to get along in upstream communities. If any of you guys are interested, I would recommend this as, yeah, there are lots of ways to be a real jerk in an upstream, and he's going to show you how not to do that. Let's see. So other interesting things on this slide. See, I said I could talk for 30 minutes on it. You guys have to give me a time check, right? But, so, virtualization, right? KVM, another open source project leading the way. Virtualization comes into your IT department. Now we need to manage the virtualization, right? Now we need things like OpenStack. We need things that are able to do provisioning. IT's getting lots of pressure from the lines of business. The business guys have to turn out applications faster and faster. Okay, infrastructure as a service. I had to hit that buzzword. You have to be able to provision it. You have to be able to manage it. And then your developers get into the game. Again, open source platforms, right? Developers start looking at what's going on in the world of their language of choice. I'm working in Python. Well, I want to work in Python 3. I'm not working in 2.4, which is what's out on my current supported platform. I'm going to go get me a Python 3, and that's what I'm going to be writing in because I want to work with the latest stuff. Well, how do you do that when you're stuck with an old infrastructure? Because that's what your IT department is putting out as your golden image, right? I'm sure a lot of you have been stuck there. And also, you don't want to have to spend a week putting together your working environment. Well, you need a Python. Oh, gee, you got to keep that updated. Oh, gee, there's another CVE. I got to patch it. Oh, man, now I need a new version of Ruby. Oh, my IDE just got a problem. I got to patch that. So platform as a service is another emerging paradigm, right? Platform as a service, we make it easy with products like OpenShift to get everything that you need rolled out so that your application developers can get right to work. Big data, containers, DevOps, buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. I'm going to get gonged here, so I'm just going to finish with a couple of slides. I wanted to make sure that I probably said it a million times already, but open source is leading in a big disruptive effort in a whole lot of different places in our industry. It's accepted. The customers accept it. The world accepts it. Why is this? Because no one company alone is ever going to have the resources to make the kind of progress that businesses are demanding on all the different fronts. Right? We can't do it company by company. Nobody has pockets deep enough. A Red Hat is 7,500 people. IBM is 275,000 people. Even with that difference in scale, IBM can't do it alone. They partner with all sorts of different companies. And it's all about the applications as well. The nature of applications is changing, right? Those big old monoliths, the things that the Gartners and the industry consultants call like systems of record or Mode 1 applications, that big old application, that Oracle database in your back room that you only can take down 10 minutes once a year, right? They're probably going to be with us forever because there's so much invested there. But the world is moving to another type of application, the fast, the nimble, the things that are the real business value, the places where you're doing A/B testing, the things that you're going to talk about in your DevOps talk, right? The New World Order. We're going to end up with two different types of application ruling the world. Containerization. Containers make it easy to build and to package an application so that you can deploy it in a whole lot of different places really easily. Container, as I mentioned, is changing the way that we think about operating systems, because if your applications are blobs that you can just plop down really easy and they carry their runtime with them, they carry their user space along, then, well, gee, your operating system has got to be a kind of a different beast. It's got to be real fast, real nimble, and it's got to be streamlined. Docker, Docker, Docker. Oh, I had to get that buzzword too. So we're rethinking what the operating system does, and you know, I run the operating system team at Red Hat, right? Believe me, we're rethinking what the operating system team does. We're looking at shrinking and stabilizing and stacking. So it's not an operating system, it's a platform for deploying containers. Of course, you know, it was always a platform for deploying applications, right? We just never really wanted to acknowledge that when we worked in the center of the operating system. You know, if you work in the kernel, right, the kernel's the only thing that matters. But the rest of the world always knew that it was all about the application. The application really was king. But we're starting to acknowledge it, and we're trying to make the world a better place for applications, because the application developers are starting to become the people who really influence what goes on within organizations. If you're a sysadmin, you've probably noticed that those pesky application developers are starting to be a lot more vocal in your organization. Anybody noticing that? Yeah? And that's certainly what we're, that's certainly what we're hearing when we're out talking with sysadmins at our big customers, right? Oh man, you wouldn't believe what those guys want us to do now. And they want it yesterday. They don't want to put in a ticket and wait a week. Right? Nobody wants to put in a ticket and wait a week. So check out Project Atomic, because that's what my guys are working on right now. You're going to gong me, aren't you? Yeah. Well, enterprises need security support scale. I'm just flashing through these. And of course, security support and scale, that's what Red Hat does for a living. So if I can get my slides to move here, I'll just go right to the end. If I can get... Let's see if that'll work. Wow, we're wedged. Oh, man. I hate it when that happens.
Must not be running Fedora.
Yeah. It is running Fedora. He's probably got the beta. Oh, man. Ooh. Oh, man. Well, so, you know, a lot of what companies like Red Hat do is we take what's going on in the open source and we act as the curators. We edit, we harden, we make sure that it performs well. We listen to our customers and work with the upstreams to make sure that the features get in that the customers are interested in. And we test, and we send a whole bunch of patches. So I didn't want to make this talk, you know, an infomercial for Red Hat, right? But we've got a lot of interesting projects that are coming along that are all totally based on upstream projects. So like the next slide, the one that we're not able to display right now, is about OpenShift, which is our platform as a service product. And it's really, you know, it's kind of cool because it's, for me, an indication that the innovation, so that it's going to be another disruptive innovation. Right? Developers are getting used to driving the way things go. So the next slide that we haven't gotten to is one big phrase that says, if it isn't in the upstream, it doesn't exist. It's really hard to make a business model out of open source software in a proprietary world, right? None of you guys are making a living out of open source software. You're doing it because you love it. Or you're doing it at nights and weekends. Or you're doing it because you got really frustrated with a particular bug that you needed to fix. Or you're hacking on open source hardware. So it's really difficult to make a business out of that. And yet what Red Hat has done and companies like Novell have done is we've managed to do it by keeping nothing proprietary. So we buy companies. Whoops. Wow, that's one way to shut me up. You guys are good.
No.
Man, I wonder when they get the hook out. No.
Keep trying.
Okay. Well. Oh, reboot. Well, so the way that we make sure that we remain true to our principles is we don't do anything with software that's proprietary. We don't have, the secret sauce. We don't keep the private plugin that, well, yeah, most of it's open source and you can get the freebie version, but if you want the real bits, then you have to pay us, right? We give away software and sell support. And if you look at the way that, we've invested billions in buying companies, things like ManageIQ, things like Ceph, things like Gluster. We buy the company, and then we take all their software and everything that they had that was proprietary, and we put it out in the open source world, and we make it a project, and we build communities around it. Because we think that that is a tremendous business value. And it's the only way that we can, in good conscience, call ourselves an open source company by being true to it. So I say this because there's another benefit, which is that if you work for Red Hat, you're never going to ever work on proprietary software. We're never going to get back to slides here, are we? Well, that's okay. So my final slide, which we're not going to see, is the challenges that I see to open source and the innovation and our ability to continue to innovate in open source as we have been. When you look at open source projects, they tend to get pretty stovepiped, right? I work on the kernel, I work on GNOME, I work on Neutron, I work on Nova. This is what I do. And I don't think about the boundaries of that project. I don't think about all the pieces where, the places where it's going to integrate. Oh, hey, I put an API on. Anybody who needs to integrate with my stuff, they can use the API, no big deal, right? But if you look at the world of proprietary, the place where they really add a lot of value is in the fit and finish, making it manageable, making all the pieces work together, making it look like it all comes from the same company. And that's the kind of thing that open source software needs to get better at over the coming years so that we can continue to be the engine of innovation and the source of disruptive change. But I think we get a lot of value out of being the source of disruptive change. It's certainly a heck of a lot more fun to work in. So I hope that you guys are all going to end up working someday in open source, and you find your favorite project, and with any luck, I'll see you there. Thank you. No, thank you, that's fine.
I did get that last slide out.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Test. This mic is dead. Okay. The mic is dead. Okay, so I'm going to keep my comments short. I'd like to introduce the core team, but this time when I introduce the core team, I'll be brief, but I want you to see a current pattern that's emerging. If we can start with Steve. Come out, Steve. Steve is the user group leader for the ProvoLinux User Group, and he's in charge of speakers and room coordination. And if we could call Dave Oswald out, Dave is the user group leader for the Salt Lake Perl Mongers, and currently was assisting with the Perl, the Perl track. And if we could call Devin out, Devin is the user group leader for the Transistor and a member of DC 801, and he is the hardware badge designer, along with Mike. And if I could call Stacy out, Stacy is in charge of the Code of Conduct and Diversity. She is also the user group leader for Girl Develop It. And if I could call Jace out, Jace is our MC and former user group leader for Plug, ProvoLinux User Group. And as I call out the rest of the members, if we can get Tyrell out, who's currently the user group leader for Utah WordPress and the smaller branches that are starting to emerge, if we can get Doran, also is a very senior member of the community in the Perl community. And if we can get Mike out, and our intern is Charlie, do you see the pattern that emerges here? What Denise was talking about with, oh, and James. Sorry, come out, James. In my defense, he was hiding in the corner, so I didn't see him. But what Denise is talking about with change happening from within the community, I think one of the reasons why Utah Open Source works so well is that we take the community leaders and I made them part of the core team. What drives Utah Open Source? And my push to you is to get to know these individuals, join their groups, and become part of the Utah Open Source community. And like Denise was talking about, not everybody has to be the ninja coder to participate in the community. There's need for designers, there's need for documenters, there's need for people to file bugs. We need you to get involved. And that's at the community level and at the Utah Open Source level. So can I get a round of applause for everybody here? So in the interest of time, I think let's pass over to Megan.
Okay, so we'll give the really, really quick intro if you guys want to start moving up. I'll grab your slides, get them ready. But just like he mentioned, we have a lot of user groups here. Well, what we wanted for our final keynote was to help add on to that, to show a little bit more about what is happening to the community, to kind of point out. And so we have two great examples here of people who kind of represent and touch on so many different parts of the community out there, everywhere from the different security groups and wonderful hackerspace teams we have out there to DevOps and all these other interesting areas. And we wanted them to be able to show a little bit of what they've done in the community and where they see it going. So I'd like to turn over time for them to present on their experiences.
Test, test.
Test.
Test. You guys can hear me okay? Thank you. Real quick. Well, actually, how much time do we have? What's our cutoff? Oh, so we are the 10. Oh, great. How many of you are part of the user group that was mentioned or a community hackerspace in the area? Okay, that's good. That's really good. Okay, how many people are familiar with what a hackerspace is? Okay, a little bit more. How many have no idea what a hackerspace is? Okay, that's good to know, and that's really good to know. So hopefully we'll be able to clear that up for you. User groups are important, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about today.
So this is us. I'm Megan. That's my Twitter handle. Shell. It's my hacker handle.
I'm Kevin, also known as Lean. These are just some images of some favorites of ours. So one of the things that we're here to talk about is primarily user groups. And one of the things that we've done recently is started a user group in Salt Lake, or kind of picked one up from years past. Anybody in here part of the old Slug group, Salt Lake Linux User Group? Oh, wow. Okay. All of you need to be out at SLCLinux now. Yeah, we had no idea. That's kind of why we're here. How many are part of Plug? How many don't like driving to Salt Lake for? Okay, I see what you did. Okay, that's good to hear. So we're going to go through a little bit of the experience of what it was like restarting up Salt Lake Linux Users Group and some of the other user groups that we're a part of. So what did we really build, though, is the question. You talk about user groups and you talk about the benefits that they have. And it's really getting together, and what do we do with that? This is kind of how it started, right? Bunch of guys and girls. I got to back up because she's the main reason SLCLinux exists. She came to me one day and said, hey, Lean, you like Linux? Yeah. You want to know more about it? Yeah. Let's start up a user group. Are you serious? Yeah. Why? That's a lot of work. No, it'll be okay. I'll do everything. So I definitely have to give props to Megan for doing that. But this is kind of how it started, right? A bunch of penguins running around trying to figure out what to do. We all love Linux, but this is kind of where we want to go, right? We want it to grow, and we want it to be bigger, and we want it to be a collective. And this is kind of the end goal, and to just make it massive. How do you do that, though?
So like what Lean touched on, why did we start a user group? Why do that? What's the point? And like he said, my career started going towards Linux. I wanted to know more. When I first got into this industry, I was all about security. So what I did is I found a user group. I found 801 Labs. And once I found that user group, got involved, I realized how much you can learn and how useful those user groups can be in getting involved with the community. So yeah, like he said, I talked to him. I wanted to learn more about Linux. And I know the advantages of having other people teach you. So it first actually started out as just a weekly meeting at the hackerspace. And then, yeah, I brought the idea to him. Why not start a user group? I tried to find where Salt Lake Linux User Group was, the slug, and I couldn't find it. So start a user group. Crazy idea, but figured we'd do it.
That's kind of what happened. Is it took a little while to figure out, are there other people getting involved and doing things that we're doing? And so we'll talk about some of the ways to kind of reach out and look at your local resources and local communities to find out how many people actually want to be part of a user group but don't know if there's ones that exist around you. Okay, so there's a few people out there. You want to be part of a user group, you don't know how to get involved. That's great. So yeah, how did we start this up? So 801 Labs is a hackerspace in downtown Salt Lake City, kind of a spinoff of the Transistor. Thank you, Devin. Decaf, did he run off? Yeah, he went back to the Hack Center. Of course he did. But no, I mean, we got involved in the Transistor a long time ago, and we really loved it, and we wanted a Salt Lake-driven space. And we also had DC801. DC801 is a DEF CON group, primarily focused on information security. And so we kind of blended the two together and said, hey, let's make a true hackerspace. And so Decaf and the Transistor guys were a huge part of making that happen. So about 3 months ago, we moved into a new building, 3,200 square foot now. And now it was 1,000 square foot before, and moving into this building has provided huge opportunities for bringing the community together. One of those was being able to have different rooms for different things, such as user groups and classrooms. We didn't have that before. And so we're at the space one night, and we started a weekly Linux. It was weekly, bi-weekly?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much whenever we wanted to learn something, we called people and said, hey, let's go figure it out, which turned into a reoccurring thing, which turned into, hey, let's do this. So one of the things that we struggled with was, how do you do this? Great. We have a group of guys and girls who want to get involved, who want to learn from each other. But how do you do that? We reached out. We said, okay, we're Slug. And it took me about a week because we kept going down different paths of, all right, well, this guy was trying to spin up Slug again, and not Splunk, Slug. That's another user group. And then someone else over here was saying, hey, it's now over in Provo, but we didn't want to drive down there. And so everyone wanted to kind of kickstart Slug again, but no one really knew how, and said, well, we started searching around. We found a good talk from last year. I think we'll mention that here in a little bit. And it was, okay, find a place. Well, we had a place. We have a hackerspace. 3,200 square feet of awesomeness. If you haven't been there, you should probably go check it out, by the way. Full classroom. I think we have 18 actual seats that you can use right now, and then a huge chill-out area. So we said, great, we've got the space to do this. What next do we need? We need people. We need content. Content. Okay, great. Content. We've done this before. We've tried to spend hours and hours building content for people. And that's hard. When you're building out a user group, it's how do you provide the content, quality content, to keep people interested? And so that was another challenge that we had. So we said, well, we have the space. We have the interest. We have people showing up consistently. And so it kind of stemmed from there. And now it was, let's get content. So now we have people, we're reaching out to people, we're saying, hey, can you present, can you do this? Or why not just show up and we'll just talk on something, or watch a DEF CON talk, or watch another conference talk, and then just kind of brainstorm on what we can do with it. And so that kind of started developing this group of people who showed up and said, hey, why don't you do this, why don't you do that? And I think that's kind of how it's really grown so quickly.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, at first it was watching a bunch of videos weekly, and then I tried to just start teaching a class every week, and I just don't have the time, and I don't really have that much Linux knowledge. So Lean helped convince me that we need to start bringing in the community. And once we started bringing in the community, having other people present, that's when we started getting a lot of people start coming out. So we want to, once you start getting more expertise, start asking questions and get them involved. Don't just try to do it by yourself.
We were kind of selfish. I'm not a Linux guru by any means. I'll admit that right now. I don't manage thousands of Linux servers daily. I'm a security guy at heart, kind of. I pretend to do security. But what happens is if I want to learn Linux, I call someone I know. That's the first thing I do is call. I have a few key people, and actually Shell is now one of them. She's blown by me in Linux. So I say, hey, how do I do this? And then they laugh at me, and then they say, okay, well, here's how you do it. But then they come down and they show me. They walk through how to do this. And so we've got some servers that we set up, and we test this stuff. But how long did it take before you burned out from creating content over and over and over again? So if you build a user group, whether it's Linux, VMware, Splunk, whatever, you have to produce content. And if you're the only two people producing content, it dies quickly because work gets in the way. You skip a week, people don't show up. And what we found out was people were rescheduling their jobs, finding babysitters to show up, and then we would get busy at work and have to cancel it that night, and they'd be very frustrated. So that quickly turned into, wait, whoa, we have to back up. We can't drive this. And that kind of turned into a whole other conversation.
So how did it help the community? I don't know why there's a goat picture, but apparently it helps community.
Now, who's seen this meme? Or at least the YouTube videos. You should go YouTube video this.
So because SLCLinux is very much in its infancy, we don't know exactly how it's helped the community. We hope that people are enjoying it. Like I said, once we started getting more people involved, more people started showing up, more people, I've seen a lot of excitement, and a lot of people excited because they wanted a user group like this. They wanted a place where they could just, come to and talk about Linux and learn about new tools and things like that. So for right now, we don't really know how it's helped other than getting people out and having people with common interests be able to talk about Linux and learn.
Well, I do know one thing, though, that when I say, hey, I'm going down to the hackerspace tonight to work on, actually, I was building out a virtual library for another project I'm working on. They're like, whoa, you're going on a hackerspace? What's that? And what's this user group you're doing? And so just by talking about it, people are getting interest, and they're saying, I wish I could do that. I wish I had time. Let's find a night to go do something. And that's kind of how it turned into, maybe not the Linux user group specifically, but, oh, what are you doing Thursday? Well, Thursday's project night. Oh, can we go work on this? I've got a Raspberry Pi project I want to do. Let's go do it. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about was our experiences with getting involved in the community and how it's helped us. I'll let you go first.
So actually, like I said, my first passion was security when I first got in the field. And I actually came to Openwest. And this is where it all started. And this is how I got involved with user groups. I saw the hackerspace and immediately went there. That was the first thing I did. Started getting involved with the CTF, and I started talking to everybody. And then I realized there was this group with a common interest of security. I didn't know anybody else that was interested in trying to hack things. And so I was very excited. And I had no idea what this was going to do, but the first day I went there, I was super nervous, It's kind of nervous being the only girl, too. But went there, and I felt really comfortable, and I started learning things. Sometimes you go there just to hang out. You start developing friendships. It starts creating these opportunities. Started volunteering for different conferences. Utah Saint, I helped them run the CTF last year. I also got an opportunity to help run the network team at Black Hat. And so it's because of these opportunities that also leads into career opportunities. I now work with this guy because I met him through a user group.
I apologize. And I know there's a couple of coworkers in the back that can attest to that. And he's shaking his head. Thanks.
So it really is true. A lot of people have said, get involved. It'll help with your career. And it really has. You have people, if there's job openings, they'll ask you to come interview. It's a really good opportunity. And also you get a lot of great friends. I'll never say that again. But
we have this recorded, right?
So
3 cameras, good. So with that, though, that was 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think so.
So how many people, this is your first Openwest? Wow. I wish the cameras could see that. 90% of the room? Holy cow. Do it again. Yeah, do it again. That is great. This is awesome. How many have visited the Hack Center? That's the problem. So, 2 years ago we ran the CTF here, and Shell walked in, sat down, and started doing some challenges, and you didn't say much. And we were kind of like, well, who is this? And we see this score going up on the scoreboard, and we weren't really sure. So we just started asking her questions. And next thing you know, she knows more about security than a couple of us, and it was kind of embarrassing. She's at this Hack Center, and we're trying to build CTF challenges that make it difficult for her, and she's blowing through them. So it's kind of funny how that gets started. And then, hey, come out to the hackerspace, come out to DC801, come out to some of the other things. And then, oh, you're hanging out at the hackerspace. Hey, we've got this conference going on, Utah Saint, shameless plug. Come help out. We need some volunteers. Oh, you're helping out at Utah Saint. Great. We've got this Black Hat Network team that we kind of throw together every year, and we kind of go down and help run the Black Hat Network. Why don't you come help out with that? And I have to give props because she spent probably combined total of 200 hours with me prepping for the conference. And this is volunteer. So we prepped in, I actually was at my house, 6 Pelican cases with like 10 other people. And that amount of time, and I don't know if people understand the amount of work that goes into user groups, community involvement, volunteer work. I know these guys do. It is tough. It's very difficult and very little reward sometimes. But the networking opportunities with it are amazing. I mean, we've met some of the smartest people in the security industry just by volunteering for Black Hat. We have great networking opportunities at all of the other conferences, including Openwest, Utah Saint, B-Sides. And what happens is the past 2 jobs that I've gotten have come from the hackerspace. Just hands down. Those are the easiest ways to get a job. Network with the people in your community. It's going to do so much for your career because they're going to understand who you are, what you really know, and the interviews just go a lot easier when you walk in and say, yeah, so-and-so's vouching for me, and yeah, I've worked with this on this project, and it just makes the process so much easier. So I can't stress enough how valuable it is to get involved, whether it's volunteer work, user groups, communities. Just hang out with people with like-minded interests. And they're going to say, yeah, I've got this job opening. Why don't you come apply? And I think at our work right now, I know the DevOps team, that's been the past almost 5-6 hires have been just from referrals and friends and just knowing people in the community. So open source and user groups. I'm going to let you guys read this for a second so it just gets ingrained into your head. Open source is good for me. I will fully embrace it.
So how can you utilize user groups to learn open source, to gain open source and make it a part of your life? One thing that I love about open source is information is open. That is so key, and it's what has driven these user groups. It's because one thing I've run into with open source is sometimes with some projects the documentation is not as good. So having these user groups, going into IRC, asking questions, helping with the documentation, making it better is how one way that user groups can help. But I love this idea of everything is open. I didn't really quite understand that when I first joined open source, but now I do. I understand the power of community and teams working and collaborating on the same project and how that can create innovation. So I wasn't like that before.
There's an E in there.
Yeah.
FYI. One of the things that happens at a hackerspace is you show up, I feel intimidated. Because when other people show up and they're smarter than me in a very specific field, it's like, I don't want to talk. I don't want people to know that I don't know anything about that. So I'm just not going to talk. And that happens. Every new person that shows up to a user group meet, to the hackerspace, or even to some of the conferences, they just don't speak up. And when they don't ask questions. And when they don't ask questions, they don't learn. And so I remember I was working on a project, and I'm just talking out loud because I tend to do that. And Shell over here is like, you should do it this way. I feel like an idiot. But I was so confused, and I was trying to do it myself, and all it took was her to say one sentence, and next thing you know, I'm 4 hours away, no more 4 hours in the trenches trying to do dependency mayhem, and I got my project fixed in an hour. It was great. So the reason why this is key, though, is if you're not asking questions, you're not getting involved. You're not going to gain the knowledge. If you're just showing up and expecting people to feed information to you, that's not going to work. It needs to be two-way street. You feed a little bit of information, I feed it back, and then it just continues. And the next thing you know, we're having a conversation that someone will walk in and be like, whoa, too deep for me, guys. Talking about kernel stuff, I'm out. And that's kind of what happens when I show up to the Linux nights, but it's okay. So get involved, and definitely don't be afraid to say you don't know. Because if you think you know everything, you just don't even show up. Or show up and provide us all the content. We'll be great. Give us all the knowledge. Let us absorb that. Okay with that. But the biggest thing to take away from this slide is that by me showing up to these meetups, it's given me the confidence to say, you know what, I didn't understand this fully, and just by having a logical conversation with someone, I now understand it. I have confidence to go implement this. It's not me reading through a bunch of documentation, trying to Google for 2 hours, trying to figure it out and hope it works, and then hope I didn't miss some security feature that makes it owned in 5 minutes. So it does so many things to just have a dialogue, have an open conversation. And for me, it's been a huge confidence builder just to say, yeah, we've had this conversation, I've bounced it off someone's head, I'm comfortable, it's the right approach, if that makes any sense.
So another key point to user groups is of course, common interests. You're meeting a bunch of people that have the same interests as you. And once again, once I found out the power of user groups, I started finding all these user groups on Meetup. I went to a mountain biking club. I went to an anime club. And so it's so great having a bunch of people that have the same interests as you. Like I said, you develop friendships, and it's a really great opportunity.
There is an anime night, I think, once a month at the Hackerspace, FYI. Networking. We touched a little bit on this before. I'll reiterate it. It's kind of a big deal. It really is a big deal. Every user group I go to, every meetup, the Transistor, when I first found out about it, they said it was an IRC. I said, hey, what is this? And they're like, oh, it's just this makerspace. It's like, oh, cool. And then we started having a conversation about wireless. And I know a little bit about wireless. Do this, this, and this. Hey, Lean, you want to come down and present? Sure, where's it at? Oh, it's down in, I think it was Provo at the time, or Orem, or the old space. Provo. So I drove down there and pulled up to this building and no idea where I was going to go. But then someone said, oh, it's on the 3rd floor. So I walk up there and did this presentation. Next thing you know, I meet all of these guys, these great guys. I think Bill from X-Mission was there, Decaf, all those guys were there. And next thing you know, we're networking. We're having conversations. We're talking about each other's jobs. We're talking about some of the struggles that we're having at each other's jobs. I say, hey, I'm having a problem at my work. What do you think I should do to fix this? Oh, you should do this, this, and this. We did it at my job, and boom, it worked. And then that kind of just grows, and it continues to grow the more you get involved. Every meetup I go to, every user group I'm a part of, every conference I attend and volunteer at. I network more by volunteering than I do by attending the conference. It's really crazy how that happens. And I've been at conferences where I don't see any of the talks because I'm just stuck in the hallway talking to so many people, and it's great because now I have all of those contacts. I have all of those references. I can go back and say, hey, I met you at this conference. I know that you had this specific knowledge. Can I pick your brain? Oh, yeah, sure. Here's my brain dump. Oh, that's too much. Take it back. But that's what happens when you network and just have conversations with people. As IT nerds, we don't generally like to socialize, but that needs to kind of stop. And maybe it's a security thing and not a developer thing. Developers like to talk to each other. So you're networking, but really, how do you get involved?
All right, so first thing.
Oh, wait.
What?
Can you see it?
Yeah, it's cut off.
No members, no community. And then, of course, I was told there would be community involvement. So I was told, Shell told me, SLCLinux, it's going to be great. There's going to be all these people. Community involvement, right? We need more people. Every user group needs more people. And so that's what we're doing right now is the more members we can bring in, the more involvement we get. And now it's actually kind of just, you ignite it and it just starts. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Do we need to go back to this one?
Yeah, so we're just going to go through a couple steps of how you can get involved with source user groups.
So this was the bringing more members.
So a key thing that it took me a second to learn is don't wait for things to happen. I went in to the DC801 group thinking, oh, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to learn all this stuff. They're going to teach me all these great things. When in fact, that is not how it happened at all. You have to put forth the effort to learn, right? So I actually went to Lena and I was like, hey, I really want to learn about Nmap. And then he's like, oh, great, you're giving a presentation in 2 weeks on Nmap.
That did happen.
So the key point is don't wait for things to happen. If you're at the hackerspace and the trash needs to be taken out, take it out. Don't wait for someone else to do it. Don't wait for someone else to start a user group. Don't wait for someone else to give a presentation. Do it yourself. Just don't wait for things to happen. Be a part of the community. Get involved. Take action. It's really simple, and once you start doing it, you'll see how much power it has to just ask questions and start doing stuff.
And it kind of, it lets other people realize, oh, maybe I should do that too. So when we show up and we start presenting and we start putting in effort, other people will show up, start putting in effort as well. And then it just is compounding from there. I don't know if you guys can read this. For my next act, I'll need a volunteer from the audience. Step right up. Anyone? No one? Fine, I'll do it myself. Thanks for nothing, guys. And that's kind of what happens when we call out for volunteers, is if we don't get them, we do it ourselves, and then it becomes us just trying to do our best. And maybe we're not the best person to present on SaltStack or Git. I'm not. And so if we don't have other people stepping up and volunteering to help us out, or any user group for that matter, it's not going to just be successful. And so that's kind of the gist of that slide.
So another key thing, and it kind of goes on back to the things of just make things happen, just ask questions as well. Start asking people how you can get involved. Ask how you can get involved. If you guys want to help out with SLCLinux, I would love it. How you can get involved, help organizing things. Just ask questions. And like Lean pointed on earlier, don't feel stupid. I think you are smarter if you ask questions and just feel stupid for a little bit, and you're going to be a lot smarter later on. That's one thing I really have tried to implement with these user groups, is just try to ask those questions that you think are stupid, and you'll end up learning a lot more. And I think a lot of people respect you a lot more too as well, because they'll start to realize how much you're starting to learn. So.
That's exactly what happened. Michelle showed up, and she started asking a ton of questions, and she was asking questions I didn't know the answer to. And I'm like, well, maybe I should start asking some questions too. And that's when it hit for me, when we had so many people in the room, and I just assumed that there was no content I could get from these guys. And that was just a horrible assumption. And so just by her showing up asking questions, I started changing the way I interacted with people. In IT, there's a big ego issue. Get rid of that. As soon as you get rid of that, your career will just skyrocket. I promise you. Another way to get involved, the interwebs. We're trying to be all over the place, but the more places you go, the worse it gets. You now have to manage content for all of this stuff, and that becomes very difficult with just a few people. So right now, IRC, there's an IRC channel for everything. There's Utah Makers, Utah, DC801, 801 Labs, SLCLinux. The list can go on and on, right? IRC is good. Valuable content throughout the day, good discussions. Kind of difficult to read backlog sometimes, kind of digresses. If you're trying to work, don't hop on IRC. But it's valuable, and it's there. Meetup has probably been a huge contributor to the large influx of people at our user group. Meetup is a great site just because as you start networking with other people, it starts recommending different meetups for you. And that's kind of how I started finding all of the other meetups in the area as well. Google, yeah, spend some time on Google searching around for how to get involved. You know, there's Reddit posts out there, there's blogs, there's, I'm going to be hesitant when I say this, in Facebook, Twitter, all of the other different social media. But definitely check those out, get involved. If you run a user group and you're not reaching out to people, how are they going to find you? So I saw a number of hands go up not knowing that SLCLinux is like restarted, and that's partially our fault. We're busy. We need help. We need help to kind of kick that social campaign into high gear and get some more people involved.
So join all the user groups, really.
All of them.
All of them. If you have an interest, join it. Go find out. Just go. Don't be afraid. Just go attend, and you'll start seeing amazing things happen. Like I said, it doesn't even have to be open source user groups. There's a ton of user groups out there for all sorts of different things. So
Yeah, I found out there was just there was like an F5 user group and a Splunk user group right across the street from our office. Had no idea. So just join as many as you can, and the more user groups you join, the more you're going to network and interact with other people. They're going to say, hey, you probably would be a better fit over here. Why don't you go help out? It's really interesting to kind of see the dynamic. I wish I could throw up some cool analytics and graphs, because what has happened with just interacting with multiple user groups is mind-blowing. So this is kind of where our problem began, is what if there isn't a user group out there? We spent a little bit of time searching for one, we couldn't find one. So own, that's an N, build your own. So we decided to build our own. And of course Minecraft, because everyone loves Minecraft, right? Right?
yeah.
We can build a Minecraft server for those who want one, if you don't already have one at your house. So how do we start one?
Yeah, how do you build one? How do you start a user group? If there's something that's not out there, how do you start it? For us, it was a little bit more convenient because we had the space, and we had a lot of people that were already interested in Linux at the actual hackerspace. So that was actually something we didn't have to consider. We had a space. You want to establish the frequency of the meetings so people actually know when it's going to happen. For us, it's every other week, and so about 2 meetings a month. So you want to establish the frequency of a meeting, and you want to encourage member involvement. Get people excited. Start talking about it, tweeting about it, writing about it on Facebook, and tell people about it so they actually know about it.
And don't cancel it.
Yeah, don't cancel it.
I feel bad, and I apologize publicly for everyone that I've messed up their babysitting arrangements.
Yes, don't cancel it. And then for us, we have been trying to figure out what sort of format we want it to be, and we've kind of just switched it every time. So we've done a presentation format where we have someone else. We had an engineer from SaltStack come give a presentation. We had somebody that works with Hadoop come out and give a presentation. We're trying to get all these different ideas into. And then we had just discussion nights. We had a RFID night the other night, and we watched a video, and then we used the RFIDs. I didn't even know anything about
SDR.
Oh, SDR.
Yes. She saw the planes flying around. That was pretty cool.
I didn't
But what happened really that night is as soon as we switched it to user-driven, it was amazing. People just started asking questions. The next thing you know, we're picking locks at Linux night. It's weird how that dynamic happens, and it's just very fluid and easy when it does. So just let it kind of run free.
Also, you can have a project night. We haven't actually done that yet, but have a project night, Raspberry Pi night, have everyone come out, set up a Raspberry Pi. And then like we had said before, if you're building a user group, use the technology that's already out there. Use GitHub, use IRC, use Twitter. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. And then actually last year, I don't know how to pronounce this name, Carousels gave a really great talk on how to build a user group. And so I would highly recommend that if you want to build a user group, to go through those slides. She talks a lot about trying to find a place and maybe the frustrations of creating a user group. So,
just to recap.
Find a user group for what you want to get involved with, and just get involved. Get involved as much as possible. Volunteer, ask questions, even if it's something stupid. If you're, cleaning the hacker space, it doesn't even matter. You're getting involved. You're talking to people. You're there. And then, obviously, if there isn't a user group out there, just build it. No one's going to stop you. Just do what you want and do what you love. And make sure it's something you're passionate about, because you're not going to want to put the time into it. So, like Lean said, this volunteer work does take a lot of hours. And you definitely want to make sure it's something you love, because it'll show.
Yeah, if you don't love it, it won't last long. And it's very apparent. So with that, this is who we are. This is how to get in touch with us. Shell, Lean with a K, because I lost my original account. Don't ask. But we'll be available for questions. So thank you very much.